Welcome back, Byte Club listeners. My name is Antonino Febbraro. I'm the founder and CEO of AdsApp LLC, as well as today's host of the Byte Club Podcast. On today's episode, we're going to be answering one of the questions that we get all the time. And as a business owner or an entrepreneur, I'm sure this is the first question that comes to mind when you're engaging with us or any sort of software consulting company. How much does an app actually cost? So for this episode, I've kind of gone through and looked at some of our historical data as to what the average of what an application actually costs, but actually broken down some costs in the long run to help you get a better understanding as to how much an app will cost, not only for the initial development, but for the long-term support of that application. So for today's episode, I want to talk about how we break the cost down in app development. So if you were to come to us at AdsApp, the first thing we would do is we would come and scope out your project and then give you a fixed price proposal or an hourly rate proposal to develop that application. Now, I want to put a little disclaimer out here. The numbers I'm going to share with you are based on historical averages. These are subject to change. They could be more or they could be less depending on how the market changes or how different rates changes. But these are the current point in time, a historical average of what an average application will cost. And we're going to give you kind of large ranges here just so you can kind of get a feel of the range of what something might cost, because they're in complete transparency. The cost of an application is dependent upon the scope of work. So the number of screens, the type of functionality it's doing, and basically the overall labor hours it's going to take to develop this application plays a big role in the cost of the mobile application. So we're kind of give you like a large range here so you can see if your application falls more on the smaller end or the larger end. And you can kind of figure that out based on the idea or functionality you have in your head and maybe the number of screens that you've kind of painted out. So let's get started. So I'm just pulling up my phone here to kind of look at the research and data that I've collected prior to this episode. So again, we're gonna break down the cost of an application into two categories. The two categories are initial cost of the build. So that means the actual labor to develop the original MVP or the original software product that's going to be put onto the market. And then the second cost is what we call ongoing maintenance. And this ongoing maintenance includes database fees as well as bug fixes and things like that. So, well, you're all wondering, what does it actually cost to develop a mobile application or a software product? So on average, from our experience, if you take the average cost of a mobile application and the average number of labor hours it takes us to produce an application, for a general idea of how much this might cost, it can cost anywhere between $15,000 to $100,000. Now, again, I just want to be very clear, this is just an average. Your application might be less or it might be more than that range. But on average, from our experience and historical data from our clients, this is the average cost of what a mobile application would cost you to develop. Now, if this budget seems really high or really low, or you just think I can't afford this or this is not for me, don't panic. There are other options to get your app idea off the ground. We've talked about this in the past about our Launchpad program. So just because you have this great app idea and you think, well, I can't afford $100,000 to develop it, that's okay. Start small. We also offer UI and UX design services and clickable prototyping services to help you basically formulate your app idea or software idea and then bring that to investors, family, or friends to raise funds and to help better pitch your idea. Now, I wanted to kind of give you some of the historical average costs of what a clickable prototype would cost, because that's where a lot of the startup companies will start, because most people don't have a large chunk of money to throw around early on, but what they do have is, a couple $1,000s here and there to build a prototype or what we call a clickable prototype that can be used to raise funds. So to give you kind of an overview of what the average cost of a clickable prototype is, that ranges anywhere from $3,000 to $10,000, depending on the number of screens that would be needed to be mocked up and designed. Again, that also take into consideration if you don't have a color scheme or a logo or different graphics that would need to be designed. That all goes into the hours of work that is included to develop this clickable prototype. So again, this is just an average estimate on our previous clients and our previous experience developing these things. So this number could be less and it could be more. It's really just based on an estimated number of hours, just like development. But that should give you a pretty good understanding of what that would cost. Now, if you're listening to this episode and you're thinking, well, that 3,000 and 10,000 range for a clickable prototype still seems really out of hand for me, that's okay. We also offer here at AdSap what we call our CTO level services, which is designed for startup companies or small businesses who have a software idea or app idea that they want to bring to market, but they can't necessarily afford to develop it yet, but they want to take the steps to formulate that idea better to get to a point where they can actually develop it fully. And that's where we kind of can step in, help you formulate your technical stack, scope out your project, help you come up with a business plan for this mobile application or software product, and introduce you to different people in our network and act as your stand-in CTO to basically help you take that idea from idea to product to market. And those we work on basically a monthly subscription, and it's flexible depending on the different clients and the different budgets you have and how much you want us involved each month in helping you formulate that idea for that software product that you're trying to develop. And again, this is the sole purpose of this Launchpad program and us acting as your stand-in CTO is to help you basically be that technical co-founder, help you formulate that idea better, and help you get your idea from idea to product to market. Some of the examples that we've done in the past to help clients in this scenario is we've helped them by basically, one, formulating their tech stack, but two, introducing them to people in our network, such as financial advisors, investors, attorneys who can help them actually take this idea and make it an actual business and then help push it forward. As a business owner myself, obviously it takes money to make money. So we help you kind of formulate the product so that it's presentable so you can show it to family, friends, or investors to basically acquire funding to come back to us, hopefully, to develop the clickable prototype or to develop the actual application. Because that's our end goal. We want to get your software idea from idea to product to market. So that basically give you a pretty good general understanding of what it would cost to have the initial build out of the application. And we've given you different options of different, pricing tiers that you can go with. But the one thing I want to stress is that no matter what your budget is, there is always a way that we can help push your idea forward. Small steps, can turn into big steps. So just take those small steps one step at a time. The second cost that goes into app development that most people forget is what we like to categorize as ongoing maintenance costs. And as I mentioned earlier, this is basically the cost of database fees, bug fixes, things like that. And so I want to talk about this at the end here because, like I said, a lot of clients tend to overlook this. We give them an initial proposal for a mobile application development, and they say, okay, that's great. But what they don't take into consideration is the actual ongoing maintenance costs. They don't take into consideration that they're actually going to be paying Google or Amazon or Microsoft a monthly fee to host their database, to host their website, to host their APIs, things like that. So I want to go over what the average cost of something like that might be. And the best way to kind of describe that and explain that here is to basically go through an example. So here at AdSap, we rely heavily on Google. It doesn't, mean that the other products like Amazon or Microsoft aren't good, because they all are very similar. They all work the same. They all offer generally the same pricing in our experience. However, we just tend to stick with Google because we're familiar with it and a lot of our clients like their products. So we just stick with it. So for this podcast, what we're going to do is we're going to basically run through an example of of designing an application through Google Cloud and what that might cost. So we'll put in the description of this episode the link to the Google Cloud calculator that we're using, but this is created by Google. This is what we use to show to clients to help them formulate a pricing plan of what a database or API service might cost. And so what I'm going to do here is I'm just going to go to that link and I'm going to build out a database platform in Google Cloud and kind of show you guys what the prices will be. And again, we'll put the link in the description below. Hey guys, sorry for this ad, but this is the ad to end all ads because we are now on Patreon. Click the link in the description below to join and become a part of our community. More information will be announced this month. We are very excited on what's to come for our patrons. Now, back to the podcast. Now that we're at the pricing calculator, we're going to walk through an example. And for this example, what we're going to do is we're going to walk through us setting up a SQL database for a mobile application that is running 24/7, 7 days a week. So the first thing I'm going to do here is I'm going to search for the product I'm looking for. So we're going to need a SQL database. So I'm going to search for SQL. And we're going to select a cloud SQL database. And now we're going to select the number of instances, meaning how many instances of this database we need. And because we're just starting out, we're going to assume we're a startup company here. We only need one. And we're going to select now just the standard database, which is 1 CPU and 3.7 gigabytes of RAM. We can always increase this as user base increases and activity increases, but to start, this should be plenty. Next, we're also going to select enable high availability configuration. And what this means is the database is always going to be available. And because, like I said, in this example, we're going to assume that this application needs to be up and running 24/7, 7 days a week. And so we never want it to really go down. For location, we're going to keep it at US Central 1. In my opinion, this doesn't really matter. However, I believe it's best practice that you should keep this location where the majority of your user bases will be. For the storage, we're just going to put in 10 gigabytes. And for backup size, we're going to put in 10 gigabytes as well. And again, we're going to assume that this database has to be running 24/7, 7 days a week. And we're going to add that to our estimate. Now, as we scroll down here, you'll see that what we just built here, the average cost is $102.82 per month. And again, this number might change and fluctuate based on different pricing as Google would change it, but this gives you a pretty good idea of what the cost of this database would be. Now, there are other ongoing maintenance fees, such as maybe you would want to pay us or a developer to fix bugs as they arise when you're live with the application. And we've also had other instances where people might have a website that needs to be hosted in a hosting platform like Wix or WordPress, and they have their own hosting fees. However, speaking for this episode, we're going to be talking strictly on a mobile application. This is a pretty good indicator of what an average cost would be to have this ongoing maintenance per month. Now, again, this will increase as your user base increases and as the number of storage or the amount of storage needed in that database increases. So this will always go up, but that's generally speaking, in my opinion, a good sign because that means that your application is growing and your business is growing along with it. So there you have it. That's basically the two different cost categories. We have the initial build of the mobile application or software application, and then the ongoing maintenance cost of the application. Like I said, we'll put the link to the calculator that we use below in the description. And if you have any questions, please feel free to reach out to us or leave a comment below in the comment section, and we'll get back to you as soon as we can with some answers around the different costs of an application. But hopefully this episode has given you a pretty good understanding of what the average cost of a mobile application might be. And like I said, I'm gonna give the disclaimer one more time. These are just an average of our previous experiences and previous client and previous data that we've collected. These numbers could be lower, they could be higher. It really comes down to the estimated number of hours it takes to develop that application. Thanks again for listening to this episode of the Byte Club Podcast. We love having you come on each episode and listen to what we have to say and learn about application development, but also entrepreneurship. So I have to ask that if you like this episode, please comment and like below. And like always, Let's build together.